Hey everyone, welcome to the panel discussion that we're having today that is about how to keep AI in recruitment and be still human. So I'm very excited to start this discussion, and I'm very thankful for this discussion to be happening, and that's possible thanks to LevelUp Ventures and Metaview. And yeah, thanks go up for people making this happen. But also, of course, I'm very thankful for the audience joining in. Yeah, I'm very curious, where are you guys joining from? I'm joining from surprisingly sunny Amsterdam. So I was wondering where the audience is coming from. So keep the chat messages coming about your current city. That will be interesting to know. Oh, London, nice, awesome. And yeah, I think the way AI is deepening its impact to how we do recruitment is very interesting, because a year ago I was just not wondering about AI because it was just another role of that scientist that I was working on, not something that was in my radar as changing my job forever. But now it's happening, and it's not just a couple of people doing it, but all the good recruiters that I know are all implementing AI with a lightning speed. So it's very interesting to know, with this pace of change, what is the way to keep the recruitment human? Because human is very important to recruitment, I think. And yeah, which brings me to introduce myself, which I forgot to do in the very beginning. I'm senior technical recruiter, have been around for more than 10 years. And I think AI is the biggest change that is hitting our field. So that's an interesting field to discuss. So what we're going to do today is to have a discussion on how we implement AI in our day-to-day work as recruiters, and how we still can make it more human, leveraging AI to do this. And I think we have the perfect panel for that to happen for us today. So yeah, we have Chris, we have Nix, and we have Siadhal. And all three are doing fascinating job in implementing AI in their own teams. And Siadhal has a very specific role in that case, also developing a tool, being on the other side. And yeah, I think that's with further ado, I'd really love for you to introduce. Chris, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Chris. I've been working in recruitment for nearly 12 years or so at this point. Started off in agency and then moved more in-house. Over the last 5 years, I've been working in more startups, and I'm currently in a gaming studio, which is a little different to tech, but it's been a super interesting 6 months, and I'm managing all of recruitment there. AI has been fascinating over the last 6 months, and we implemented Metaview about 3-4 months ago, and I was blown away by it. So super excited to have a chat with everybody today about it.
Yeah, game dev is a fascinating and very beautiful field. Nix?
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Nix Stephens. I'm the lead recruiter at Teraflow.ai. I've also been in recruitment for quite a while, since 2008, across different industries. I started out in hospitality, I ran my own agency, and more recently moved into tech and really found my groove there. I feel very fortunate to have found myself in an AI company just when AI really hit. And I've very much enjoyed diving into all of the different aspects and capabilities and possibilities that have come with it. So yeah, that's me.
Great, awesome. Very awesome to hear that the tech group is very relatable for you. Siadhal.
Hey folks, I'm Siadhal. I am one of the co-founders and the CEO at Metaview. I've been building recruitment software for about 5 years, always with this sort of the potential of AI in mind. And then very recently with the sort of the real punch you in the face, tangible impact of AI in mind. So yeah, it's been an amazing sort of 7 or 8 months to be involved. And sort of when I look down and sort of look over the next year or two, I imagine it's going to be more of the same. So for those of you that don't know, Metaview is an AI assistant for recruiters and their calls, their key conversations. So things like interviews, screening calls, intake meetings. We help recruiters do a better job at capturing the information that matters out of those calls. Yeah, excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, we implemented Metaview at LevelUp for our clients and for our own recruitment a couple of months ago, and it has been truly life-changing. I do agree, and yeah, keep it coming. And with the new release with templates, right, with customizable templates, I think it's gonna do our job with the scorecards as well. So that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, anything we can do to help you focus on having great conversations is really what we focus on.
Okay, awesome. I really want to do a couple of housekeeping rules here. So it will be recorded for people that can't join, or just a simple question that comes in very often. It will be recorded, and if you have a question popping up inspired with the discussion, just put it in the Q&A session. We'll be addressing that towards the end of our discussion. Okay, I want to kick off the conversation with a simple question. What is your tool set right now when it comes to AI and recruitment? Nix.
So ChatGPT for job descriptions, writing my job ads and a lot of my posts. It is quite limited though, and of course you do have to check everything, but I'm not having to go and corner hiring managers for hours at a time to get, you know, one point at a time in terms of what does this job entail has been amazing. Also for research, like looking into what is the difference between a data analyst and a data engineer. You know, I don't have to do deep dives into Google anymore. I can just prompt it to ask me to give me that information. So we use Ashby as our applicant tracking system, which is really nicely integrated with Metaview. Obviously Metaview, huge fan, and has just absolutely been the game-changing AI for me, AI technology and recruitment. It was so exciting to come across it and to see that this industry that I've been in for so long has actually got tools now. You know, it used to be the fun and games that came with other spaces in companies, and now recruitment has its own fun tools to play with. So that's been good. And yeah, we use a couple of other automation things here and there. I've been looking into a bunch of different sourcing tools, but really it's been Metaview, ChatGPT, and Ashby, which is what I consider like a really new world, cutting edge applicant tracking system. So that's my tech stack.
Love Ashby, love Ashby. Chris, what is your stack?
Yeah, I think it's similar. We are very close to implementing Ashby, but we also do use Metaview. ChatGPT is my best friend, of course, as well. So there's a huge amount of noise out there when it comes to the tools. So, you know, you could spend days, you could spend weeks actually, you know, trialing these consistently. But, you know, I think once you find one or two key tools, or even, you know, 3 or 4 max, you know, you need to continue to focus more on you know, the actual role that we're doing as recruiters, and not forget that it's very much a human job that we're doing, and not, you know, we can't automate every single aspect of the job right now. So I think that's a challenge that we're dealing with so much out there right now.
Yeah. And the question, I think, is also, do we want to automate? Not only that we can't, but also, do we need to automate? Thanks for sharing, Siadhal.
Yeah, I actually quite similar stack at Metaview to what the folks have mentioned already. I'd say the one that I'd add that I sort of have like a quasi recruiting use case for is Loom. It's not like an AI tool, like it didn't start as an AI tool, but actually got some really nice sort of AI features built into it now, where it similarly sort of helps summarize the videos you might want to send to a candidate, because we're small enough that we have like quite high touch interactions with our candidates. We try and send them, if they have a question, I might actually end up deciding to record a Loom in answer to it or something like this, and it does a really good job of summarizing that stuff. So been quite impressed with their roadmap around this as well. Another tool I would probably recommend folks check out. I haven't necessarily personally used it for recruiting uses, but maybe Nix, in your use case you mentioned of sort of understanding the difference between, say, like a data engineer and a data analyst, or whatever might come up, you know, whatever question might come up. For those sort of research-based questions, try out Perplexity.ai, and I think you'll find, yeah, it's basically built for that. When you have like it includes the references, and it sort of tries to synthesize the sort of the answer that you get, but from different sources, basically. So it's quite good for that.
I think it's more for scientific research, but I've never heard if it used for recruitment. But that's a good cue to kind of make it more scientific. That's awesome. Also, I was wondering, well, all the tools that you are mentioning, they are kind of an extension of human, right? Because before Metaview, we were all just doing manually the note taking, which is basically changing a lot. Before HB, we were doing the personalization maybe very manually, but now we have AI tokens for that, taking part of the job away. So I was wondering, what do you think about how the role of AI as an extension of a recruiter, how that changed the human aspect of hiring? Nix.
Well, I think you're spot on with it being an extension of us, and that's a big part of this conversation, right? Is how the human is now highlighted as opposed to eradicated. So the stuff that's mundane and repetitive, that if we were honest with ourselves, we didn't actually enjoy very much, are the first things to go. And the robots are better at it anyway, so why not let them do it? You know, so yeah, I think it definitely is an extension of us, and a different type of intelligence. You know, there's a clarity there. It's like when I'm using ChatGPT, the better I get at prompting, the more like maths it becomes, right? It becomes like formulaic. And my mind doesn't necessarily think that way, because I'm a human and I'm creative and I'm intuitive and those sorts of things. And I feel like those aspects of myself have more space now, more time to play. And as a result, there's more time and space for things like connecting with other humans, for instance, with Metaview, because I'm not sitting there typing, because I'm not sucked into this pretty manual process. I can go deeper in terms of the human connection, the interview that I'm having, the conversation that I'm having with somebody. So yeah.
So just to kind of add on to Nix's point, I think that also means that we can provide a much better candidate experience, right? So, you know, taking all of the admin and mundane tasks out of what we're currently doing, you know, that gives us so much time back in order to focus on, you know, the human interaction, the touch points, right? So as a recruiter, you've got touch points throughout, you know, when you have a candidate in the process, you want to give them a call beforehand, you want to prep them, you want to actually give them a call afterwards to see how they got on. You know, those touch points are the difference between a candidate accepting an offer and declining it at the end of the process. So, you know, really, really valuable to be able to get that time back. And, you know, the great recruiters are the ones that are going to actually use that time to actually enhance that human connection. So yeah, just a little bit to add on to that.
Yeah,
and off the back.
Yeah.
Sorry, just on top of that as well, I was thinking about the idea of intuition. And, you know, this first 5 to 10 seconds when you meet someone, even if it's online, you get a sense of them. And as recruiters, we could often historically be trying to get through our set of questions to get onto the next thing, to get onto the next thing. Now to actually stop and engage with that aspect of ourselves, that is a different type of intelligence that we might not have had space for in the past, like to really sort of settle into that. Like, what is that 5 to 10 seconds of human intuition that can tell you something that, you know, I probably won't be able to for quite a long time? There's power in that, I think.
Yeah. Well, we can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, I'm terrible with technology, you know. No, I'm just obviously totally agree with the points made so far, and maybe like an interesting. Obviously, I've built products for recruiters for a long time, and have a bunch of friends and sort of partners who are good. So sort of feel like I've got pretty good whiskers and empathy for what they go through and what they care about. But one of the other perspective that I have, of course, is just as a business owner or someone who has hired a bunch of people, etc. And when I think about recruiters that I've loved working with, a lot of the time, of course, there's the sort of the actual task that needs to get on. Someone needs to find these people, screen these candidates, etc. And I never sort of had that in a massively sort of, I guess I never differentiated between recruiters in terms of how good they were at those things necessarily. There may well have been tons of differentiation, but I, as the hiring manager in the equation, I didn't really understand it so well. But what I did really have a feeling for was this person helping me and my company put the best foot forward in front of this candidate? And I think that's what, again, when you think about what's not going to change anytime soon, it's probably going to be that thing, because that's if every company on the planet, let's imagine every company on the planet starts using Metaview, fingers crossed, and all of the other tools that you mentioned as well, it's still going to be that the only alpha, the only differentiation is going to be, if they've all got the same suite of tools, the only difference is going to be the people that they meet along the way, to use a bit of a cliche. So I think that was always true. I do think we always valued that. It's just that we also plied these people with a ton of sort of admin they had to do as well. So it's really, really difficult for them to be exceptional about this differentiated stuff. But now we're starting to sort of gradually take all of that off people's plate, and people are starting to realize, wow, this person can be the sort of, you know, the sort of the advisor in my ear when I'm thinking about who to hire. This person can be the person who thumbs the scale so they end up accepting our offer and not someone else's. And those things are just incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I really love the notion of cliche, because cliche means it's so important that it's overused. And then meeting people and clicking with the people that you're going to work with, I think is crucial. And that's why I'm curious to learn if you think that human interaction throughout the process, since part of the process is getting automated with AI, if the human interaction changes in essence, the way the people are interacting and the goals they are setting, is it changing with AI?
I think there might be, and obviously I'll just go first just to mix it up a bit. I think there might be, I think the sort of the general answer is no. Like the true sort of substance of the interaction, and I guess like, you know, how you make each other feel and those sorts of things won't change. But I don't think it's as like categoric as maybe some people let on, which is like, no, definitely not. Because like, let's imagine one of my parts of my personality is that I have a bunch of strengths, but maybe one of my weaknesses is I don't always remember to follow up on things or like send them that note afterwards or whatever. So there's a bunch of things that can help me in my interpersonal interactions that may well be sort of augmented or powered by AI, but still sort of with me at the tip of the spear doing the actual, you know, providing the human elements to it. So I do think there's like an augmentation capability. I don't think it's a straight up, hey, AI is only going to do the sort of the totally robotic things, and humans are only ever going to do every single sort of part, every single task involved in communication humans are going to do. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think there's going to be like a blur, there's going to be a messy middle, and everyone's going to work out where they want to sort of spike. Like, you know, maybe I'd be more likely to rely on an AI to let me know when I really should be getting in touch with someone, because I know I'm weak at that, and therefore AI does a better job. So let me rely on it. Whereas Chris might say, well, that's something I'm super in tune to. And actually, whenever I use an AI tool for that, it doesn't actually get the timings right. And, you know, I'm far better off doing that myself, because we're all different. So I think there will be like a messy middle. But overall, again, if you want to have alpha, if you want to be differentiated, then you're going to have to be that layer on top, that final decider, and the one who sort of chooses the words and the sequence and all these things to put into action.
I think I think one of the main things that obviously humans are so good at are kind of, you know, interacting together and being able to build relationships with each other. And, you know, I think being able to engage, kind of empathize and build those meaningful relationships with candidates along the way, like that's what's definitely going to differentiate yourself from others. And I think knowing how to use these AI tools and knowing what tools are actually going to benefit you specifically, as Siadhal was saying, like not everyone is going to benefit you. So it's important to know, to try out and test and know which ones are actually going to be of benefit to you, and then be able to kind of shape them and groom them into, you know, the type of recruiter or kind of, you know, recruitment manager that you really do want to be overall.
Yeah. And I really love that this means that basically at the end, AI is going to be very individualistic. So my AI toolset will be very different from someone else's AI toolset as a recruiter, but also as a human, because ChatGPT is not only helping me recruit, it's also helping me choose the second film that I'm going to look at that day. Yeah, but I'm wondering if we look at the other side, what is that we do not want to give to AI? What is that fundamentally is human, other than the empathy that you mentioned? Is there anything else?
So I read a book before ChatGPT even kind of came into into form. It was the robot-proof recruiter, and it's a lot of the same kind of concepts are very relevant to what's happening right now. And I think the author was Christina or Katerina Collier, I think her name was. I can put it in the chat after this, but she said that as recruiters, we're getting so focused on these AI tools to do everything for us that we're forgetting, what we need to do as recruiters, and that human connection, that human aspect. So, I think there's always going to be that gap that AI is not going to be able to actually do those types of things. Regarding your question of what we want to give them, we can't expect them to do everything, or you can't expect them. I'm saying it as if they are a person. But you can't expect it to actually do absolutely everything for you here. Okay, that's why we're saying you need to really define your playbook when it comes to the tools that you're actually going to be using, and actually test and trial and see what works for you.
There's a coldness, right, to technology. You can feel it. You can feel it. Just think about the difference between a chatbot and the general frustration that comes from even the best interaction with the best chatbots, and the relief that you feel when you get a human being on the other side that can hear your story and hear me out. And we're going to get our filters in place so that so much of the obvious easy filtering is done for us. But when we have that select, beautiful talent pool of well-crafted individuals that are coming to the company, we want them to have, as you said, the best possible experience. And I think that a big part of that will be in the human that is us as recruiters, telling the story of the company and showing up and being truly present to those people, being able to give them the opposite of the chatbot experience.
Yeah.
I guess the way I tend to think about this is maybe not sort of getting into specific behaviors or tasks that we won't ever sort of let an AI handle for us, but more I more think about it from an accountability perspective. I think one thing that will never essentially change is, where does accountability lie for performance, for decisions? And that's always going to be in the same place. And that's how people will work out their tool set and their playbook is, hey, listen, I'm accountable for bringing this many great people in this amount of time, and I'm empowered to use use the money and the tools at my disposal to make that happen. And you are still going to be accountable. If you don't do that, you'll, whatever. If you repeatedly don't do it, you'll end up not working with that company anymore. If you repeatedly do that and then some, you'll end up really progressing in that company, not the AI. They're not going to give the AI a pay rise. They're going to give you a pay rise and you increase responsibility. So that's not going to change. And you can backtrack from there to understand, well, there are parts of this again where I'm going to I think I can differentiate myself. So I think it's a really hard question to answer, sort of categorically, we won't let AI do this or that. I think there's one that probably is, I'd say for most people, a principle, certainly in creative work, that I think everyone on this call predominantly recruits for, which is the actual final decision. So when I talk about accountability, who's going to be accountable for that we've hired this person? It's not going to be the AI, it's going to be you folks. If you decide that I'm going to let an AI make that decision for me, then good luck, because we've obviously seen times where that's gone really badly. That's not to say we'll never sort of be at a point where recommendations are really accurate, but fundamentally accountability will always be with the humans. So I think less about the tasks that we will sort of make AI responsible for, more about the accountability. The accountability for the performance of your team, for the performance of you personally, for the decisions you make is still going to be yours. And that won't change.
Yeah, so accountability and decision, which reminds me, recruitment is basically a series of decisions, right? From the sourcing at the very beginning, if I'm looking at the profile, deciding if I'm gonna contact this person or not, coming to the end of, I don't know, does this person have this specific competency? Does this person fit good into the culture? So when we look at this continuum of the decisions, basically, what do you think is current role of AI? Is it where exactly does it take the decision from us already? A mini decision, maybe. Chris, maybe you have an opinion here?
So I think we are, again, it kind of depends on the companies, on everyone's kind of way that they're trying to implement AI right now. I still think we're at the very, very start of this. So, being able to use it to, potentially remove biases and help us really kind of scan job descriptions, allow us to, be able to understand that aspect, I think is going to become really, really important for us. But I don't think that's being implemented across the board at all yet. Outside of that, I think not actually from an AI perspective. I don't have a huge amount of examples on it right now. Oh, how about you, Nix or Siadhal?
I just see it used primarily. I think the first wave is basically automation. So essentially what you will see is automation of sort of process that I think Nix explained really well initially, which is things we've never really wanted to do anyway. Like definitely when I think about when we're building Metaview, what do I think about? I think about what are things like that Nix and Chris and Ach, what do you not want to be doing anymore? Because that's what you're going to start to use. So it's like a really simple equation. Like how can we replace, like how can we automate some of those things? And I think that's pretty common across industries, to be honest. And I think you're talking about that wave lasting a good, I mean, it'll go on forever, but I think that would be the focus for a good, 2 to 3 years. As more and more proprietary data gets consumed by AI. So what I mean by that is, let's imagine you decide, hey, we're going to let an AI ingest all of our own proprietary recruiting data in some way. So Metaview is an example of people doing that. Obviously, Metaview consumes and actually generates the interview data for you. If as you do that more and more, you might start to rely on that AI for detection of certain things. Like, okay, well, now every single interview has gone through this platform. I'd really like to know how comp expectation for AI engineers in Cape Town has changed over the last 12 months. One option is go and ask everyone in the company if you can remember roughly how you feel like it's changed over time that you've been interviewing people. Another option is for me to ask this AI that can detect this for me because it handles these queries. So I think that's the general sort of waves that we see is start with automation, move to detection, or like start to then benefit from the detection you get off the back of the AI being present. But I think those are a lot of the time are new use cases. I don't think they're actually, automation is obviously replacing. Detection a lot of the time is a new use case because you're detecting things you never would have even thought you could ask. You never had the data before, so you could never even think about it. And then this final stage is more what you are, the sort of the previous question, which is around recommendation or intervention or even decision. Like how do we work out what we let it start to do there? But I think that's like sufficiently far away that but it's definitely not where we, for example, spend our time. And I find that with a lot of customers as well. They're sort of more thinking about personal productivity than they are, how can we sort of give up our agency in this and let someone else decide for us?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think as recruiters, we're all using it now to really our own benefits and seeing, how can we improve, let's say, reach outs, how can we improve the interview questions that we're asking, how can we get good answers to those interview questions. I think those things are at the moment that's going to ongo for the next year or two at least, as Siadhal was saying. And I think it will get more and more complex and it will get more and more exciting, I think, for us. But I think the core of it is that we can't get too carried away with that. We need to be able to still maintain what we're actually doing as recruiters.
I agree. So we're the ultimate decision makers, as Siadhal said. And I can't remember who it was, but I was watching a podcast recently, and the guy was saying that he sees AI as a really junior intern who needs to be very talented, but needs to be monitored at all times. And I think that definitely resonates with me. So for all of the amazing automations, for all of the insights that I'm given, for all of the information that I prompt and receive, I check it. I check everything and check against, like, do I think that's true? Does that sound right? Before any decisions are made, because AI told me.
Yeah, basically supervising AI as you will do an intern.
I think I guess one of the things that was, I think, really really interesting about the question basically is you can talk about decision. Hey, we're not going to have it make hiring decisions, let's say. But what your question was also sort of posing was, but actually there are like these mini decisions along the path. Like, where do you choose to source? Like, if you never choose to source from a certain, let's say, people from a certain company or something, you're of course never going to hire them. That was a decision you made upstream that you never sort of explicitly baked down as like, you know, but it has affected some other human being's outcome. So I think that's obviously like a world where almost it will. There's a good chance there's ways that it will stop us making inherent because suddenly we have more time to focus on these human things, and actually we're using AI for more of the rote things that, of course, don't get tired and, you know, don't stop working at 6 p.m. and go home and have like a meaningful life with their family and things like this. Of course, they don't have these limitations. So actually, you'll find there's a bunch of decisions, many decisions that we're making inherently that you take off the table, and that's a good thing. So I think there's two sides to it.
Yeah, I honestly also have application review in mind, because it's an important but small decision, because you're making it very repetitively and all the time, and with different roles. Of course, you might have just 5, or you might have 500, right, applicants. And I'm wondering if that behavior, in your opinion, should be replicated in AI, for example.
It's quite interesting. That's I feel that's been around longer than let's say ChatGPT or things like that. I think resume reviewing and things like that, having it go through a system, that has definitely been around for quite a while, but it certainly hadn't picked up steam too much, to be completely honest with you. And I think so long as kind of the machines become more complex, and they understand things a little bit more, and, you know, as we advance, I suppose, I do believe that is an area that this will eventually probably take over the screening aspect, but it has never taken off up to this point, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the fabric of these things will change, right? If the way applications work right now is you introduce you call a bunch of characteristics required that you don't really think are required. You're just trying to reduce the pool of people you're going to have to end up reviewing and speaking to. So again, I do think that to actually like realize that benefit, you may well have to accept that the AI will make some decisions about, well, which of these candidates am I going to put in front of them? But the reality is that it will be much higher resolution decision than you baked into the process, which was anyone who hasn't been to university, I'm not going to look at. Anyone who doesn't have this many years experience, I'm not going to look at. That's just a self-preservation tactic. So I do think it will be involved in application review. I still think maybe like the point at which you decide who are we going to actually have a conversation with in the next few years will probably still be a human deciding that. But of course, they may not review a bunch of resumes that an AI has decided we're not going to. And then the way I envisage this going is, again, because this is a person, the amazing thing about this one of the amazing things about this sort of the foundational technology is how personalized it can get. The fact is, as it learns from me of the applications that I tend to put through and tend not to put through, and it knows how well those applicants go on to do, not only can it start to automate some of those things for me, but it can also suggest, hey, looks like you're putting through a bunch of applicants who the hiring manager ends up hating. Why don't you think about this? Maybe you're weighting this characteristic too much. And that's what I mean by this sort of like this detection, the emergence of this detection piece as well. But again, I think the key thing that maybe can sometimes, you know, confuse folks is the fabric of the application will probably change too. So you'll get some messy period where people will just apply AI to the current application process, and there'll be some bad things that happen about it. And then there'll be some realization that actually we can undo some of the fundamental assumptions about how we handle applications because we have this really powerful technology, and we'll end up in a better spot.
I think AI usage on the candidate side is already overtaking. And whenever you put an open message, open field for your applications, you just get a bunch of generated. You can't act on it because you can't verify it, but that's obviously AI generated. Nix, I was wondering if you had anything to say, because unmuted yourself at some point.
Yeah, sure. So I'm testing out a technology that I actually didn't mention in my tech stack because it's new to me. And what it does is called Jobs ASI. And what it does is it's embedded into my applicant tracking system, and it summarizes a CV for me. Now, these sorts of tools might have been around for ages, but I haven't used something like it before. And I'm the first person to actually trial it. So I'm teaching it as I go, right? Whether it was right or wrong, did I like what it said? And it was just like Metaview, it was one of those things that instantly I was like, well, if this works, if this is what it says it is, this is going to be an absolute game changer, because that's once again one of the repetitive, mundane things that we do. We scan CVs, right? And it's probably going to be better than me at looking up keywords and knowing the similarities between this type of technology and that type of technology and whether that person fits the bill. If it's not that intelligent yet, it's going to get there. But what it's not going to be able to do for a while is that other stuff that I was talking about before, the soft skills, you know, the picking up on the nuances in a CV, the story that's being told there that's interesting, that I've learned how to look for, and we've all learned as recruiters how to, oh, that's an interesting one, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, like a big gap, like why is that gap there? Yeah, so that's been pretty cool, just looking at AI technology, what it can and can't do at this point, from that viewpoint to something else that I do day in, day out.
Yeah, exercising that free will, basically, deciding that, well, this is not my pattern, but maybe that's something interesting to discover. Speaking of which, what do you think AI is going to do to bias? Because it can make it way better, it can make it way worse. So what do you think is going to be this trajectory with bias in recruitment and AI?
Yeah, I think I just kind of listening to both Siadhal and Nix, I think that sounds like an incredibly powerful tool, but you need to be very cautious with how you use it, because if you have, let's say, subconscious bias and you're consistently putting somebody through that's from the UK and has gone to Oxford, but you actually don't even realize you're doing that, the actual machine is going to learn that that's what you enjoy, that's what you really like. So they're going to then start suggesting and recommending candidates that are coming from that background. And, that's where this can get very dangerous from a bias perspective, because you don't even realize that you're doing it. Okay. And I think, if you put the right instructions in place, right? So the keywords and things like that at the very start, and it can make that all, it can kind of apply all of that very well. But then if you actually are just picking specific candidates without even realizing it, it will then start learning it in that way. So I think there's two sides to it. I think it's a really incredibly beneficial tool and something that we can, use and have huge benefit off of over the next while. But we really have to be careful with it from a bias perspective as well.
I was thinking about the bias thing after we met for that quick chat, and what I would hope to see is that, because we know that a lot of bias is unconscious, as humans, it's one of our failings, right? If we're careful, we can teach it how to be better than us. So act like an act like an unbiased recruiter and find me X, Y, and Z. Do you know what I mean? Like, make it into that equation that actually takes into account what bias is and tell it not to do that.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Educating AI in the way that we sometimes can't educate ourselves because of those unconscious.
Again, I think the other folks on the panel can do a far better job than I, sort of really bringing it to tangible, sort of near state realities that we can aim for. The underlying, I guess, principle that I think is definitely true is all these technologies, whether you think about sort of internet or mobile, whatever, all the massive shifts we've been through, they are essentially accelerants. They accelerate you towards wherever you want to go quicker. Now, we all believe that having diverse teams helps with performance. So if you leverage these tools to accelerate you towards a better, stronger, and therefore more diverse team, because you have more information at your disposal when you make decisions, because it's able to detect for you things that you maybe aren't, the unconscious biases you may have, then great. if actually you have really high conviction in your biases and you want your AI to help you, then there'll be cases along the way where people make mistakes and where there's negative outcomes, because it's going to get you where you're going quicker. But I think most people, especially in the recruiting industry, of course, are super aware of this topic, and it's like their job, our job, to sort of chaperone things in that way and be that voice, obviously, within the organizations as well. So my overall, when I say that it's an accelerant, what I mean actually is that long run, I think it's going to be amazing for removing bias. But again, along the way, you'll have sort of maybe 10 biases that get removed from a process, but maybe one new one that gets added, and we're like, oh dang, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for X or Y. But actually, you sort of got to think of the bigger picture. So yeah, another way of saying, I guess, it's sort of on us. Like, again, we are accountable for the decisions that we're going to make about the folks we interview and bring into companies. Especially if you're starting to use an AI to sort of very clearly make decisions for you, then of course you probably have a bit of a duty of care to sort of understand how it goes about making those decisions and sort of oversee things for certainly a while. But yeah, that's how we tend to think about it.
Yeah, and also a follow-up on this, as you have a really unique insight, because being on the other side, I was wondering if on the journey of developing Metaview, you had this point of noticing maybe a bias that is integrated in the fabric of how AI is summarizing notes, or something that you noticed and was interesting and can be shared.
No. Actually, short answer, no. We haven't noticed anything like that. And there's a couple of things that make Metaview a little bit. That doesn't mean it's not true for other AI tools, but in Metaview's case, because we put the context that we apply our AI to is very bounded. So let's say Nix has a screening call after this, and she'll obviously use Metaview for it, and she'll capture that conversation. The notes will get taken. The notes it's only going to focus on what is actually within the conversation, and Nix can even prompt Metaview to make sure it includes certain things. And of course, Metaview has no agenda here. So because the context is so bounded, actually, it's been really easy for us to just almost like deterministically build it in a way that we can ensure any of the obvious biases aren't included, and it's just a fair reflection of the conversation. So I think where you get into a world of bias is much more when you start to, and because it's not presenting an opinion. We do have one of the interesting things we have seen is we have an AI assistant within our product, and people ask all sorts of questions, and some people do ask, hey, like, was this a good candidate or a bad candidate? So there's a bunch of question types that we've had to prepare for to make sure that, okay, like, let's make sure, very much like you see with ChatGPT on certain topics, but of course they maybe miss things sometimes, where you can sort of bake in buffer to make people realize this is not like what Metaview's for. This is we shouldn't be answering. We're not going to answer this question for you. So it's more actually the user side where we've seen interesting traits that more so than the foundational models, which, I mean, basically one of their strongest suits is summarizing information, which is one of the things that are like a cornerstone of our product. It's
basically AI going, that's your job, that's not my job. You have to do that at the end of the day. Yeah, very interesting. And what do you think is biggest risks that AI is presenting for human-centric recruitment? So I think, who has an opinion on this?
I'll go, maybe while people are sort of, again, having a think, I think the biggest risk will be in implementation. I think the biggest risk is in implementation. So I think a lot of organizations have a top-down pressure. There's a bottoms-up desire to adopt these tools too, but at the same time, there's also a top-down pressure to, hey, we should be thinking about how to be more productive here. Like, there's a revolution in productivity occurring. What are you doing, recruiting leader, to make sure your team is more productive? And same thing goes to every person in the company. So I think that can obviously, I don't think that top-down pressure is totally illogical, because of course, for obvious sort of commercial reasons, but it means you have to be careful about sort of adopting things for adoption's sake. And then, that's not the right thing to use. And suddenly AI is no good for us for this, what you think is like a very sort of specific reason to your company, but it's not true. It's just that you didn't truly maybe think through the outcome you're trying to achieve, think through where in your funnel the biggest problem and the highest leverage could be had, and then apply it in that way, just because there's a bit of a scramble at the moment. I do think that like vendors like us are sort of adapting to that by enabling free trials, and you can see for yourself whether you will actually use it, and are getting the benefits out of it from it over time. But I would say that's probably the biggest risk would be in the adoption, because I obviously firmly have the opinion that sort of pragmatically and intelligently applied, you can be as a recruiting team, orders of magnitude more productive than you were previously.
I agree. What you're saying about implementations, also using the tools appropriately, right? That's what you mean, and setting it up for success within your environment. And what you're saying as well about the scramble, I saw that very much with myself, being in a fortunate situation where in an AI company we said, go find it, go you see what it can do, take it on, just play with everything, and doing masses of research and taking up a lot of time. Playing with all of these different tools was really fun, but I started to see, well, that's actually not better than me at this, and that's really good, that should be doing that. And I'm being selective, so that you do set yourself up for success with these different things, and not overwhelming yourself with too many things going on as well.
Yeah, there's a fine balance between the two. I think we're currently in the state of going out and trialing things, and right now it is taking up a huge amount of our time, but the reason being is down the road we certainly want to be able to take the time back eventually. And I think the biggest risk right now is the fact that it's potentially time consuming to know what AI tools we should be using, because there is so much out there. And that's what I said at the very start, like if you find 3 or 4 tools that are having a huge impact on how you work, you don't need any more. That is enough. That's the core of what you should be doing, especially if you're looking across the board on what are the key things that we should be doing, or what are the key areas recruiters should be looking to use this. It's very much in candidate experience. It's in the interview process itself. It's in sourcing and everything like that. So those core areas are, if you find the right tools for your playbook, then you'll save a huge amount of time. But the risk right now is we just don't know. Some people don't know exactly what ones are the best ones.
Yeah, and accurately implementing and doing the right design. I think Kevin Willer's article a couple of days ago was very good breakdown on this, that actual implementation requires quite a lot of work. It's going to be up at the beginning of your implementation journey, and only after it will kind of ease your day. Okay, I think we have a couple of questions.
Oh, yes. And I was just going to say, actually, just to play, I think Brian in the comments has made a really good point as well, which I think is almost a continuation of this implementation point, which is, well, if there is like a lot of top-down pressure, and maybe even top-down sort of assumptions around what the right way to do this is, then that's also potentially an issue. So yeah, I won't read it out, but people should check the comment because it's a good one.
Yeah, agreed. And I think we have a couple of questions coming in from the audience. I want to start with this one. What are other tools? Anonymous attendee is asking, what are other tools do you recommend or are testing right now? Nix, you mentioned something. Do you have anything to add to that?
So the one that I mentioned, it's like I say, it's very much brand new. It's learning from me and a couple of others as we go. That's Jobs ASI, and what it does is summarizes CVs for you, and it integrates with the ATS, so you get this nice little succinct paragraph outlining who the person is. Something that I'm very excited about, I'm not sure if anybody else here has tried, is People GPT and its competitors, because that's just amazing, right? That's you're creating, it's like your own personal Boolean without having to actually Boolean and say, find me all the data engineers in San Francisco with this area code that work there, and there, and then it just gives it to you. It's a recruiter's dream. So that's something that I'm excited to dive into next. And that's pretty much it from me. I think everything else that I'm using on the outskirts of that is more automation than AI.
So sourcing and CV summary. Okay, thanks.
So I've tested and trialed on presentations.ai, which is it's in the name, right? So I think it wasn't exactly what I wanted. So I think it needs a lot of tweaking in order for you to get the presentation that you really want. But of course, you essentially tell it the type of presentation, and creates an entire presentation for you. So, that again is, I would use it as a base, and then from there you actually build upon that. So it hasn't become part of my daily kind of routine or kind of what I'm using for presentations all of the time, but it's certainly helping me with providing a bit of a base on that stuff, especially if you're going to be doing a number of different presentations, whether it be to internally about interviewing within the organization, or even to your executives, whatever it might be. It can certainly help you with ideas and provide a bit of a framework for you to work off of as well.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about Midjourney. So I've been having so much, you just reminded me with your presentation. So it's the most fun. It took me a while because it wasn't particularly intuitive for me to get myself set up on Discord. But now that I have, with the time and space that I have now, I've been getting much more into marketing and talent attraction campaigns. And one of my biggest frustrations is that I don't know how to do the pretty stuff. Now Midjourney is doing all that cool stuff for me. So that's something else that recruiters can dip into that's so fun.
One more to add. It's in ChatGPT, but it's sort of a setting, and you need to be on ChatGPT Pro or whatever the premium product is called, which is there. It used to be called Code Interpreter. I'm not sure actually the name of it now, but essentially there's a setting where you can upload data and just ask it, using natural language, sort of, how many candidates have we spoken to in the last N months, or what's our conversion rate from application review to offer, and literally just ask the question in natural language, and ChatGPT will show you its workings and sort of spit out an answer for you. So I don't think that's a long-term answer. I don't think people really want to be obviously downloading CSVs of this data, uploading it to ChatGPT, and then asking the question. Of course, we'll have something much more consolidated in future, but it's still a pretty cool way to. It's really cool to play with them, and it's one of those. I feel like there's been a lot of mind-blowing moments in the last sort of 6 or 7 months, but it is first time you use that, it's pretty like, wow. So Siadhal, is that you literally download all of your data for, let's say, last month, and then you can upload like onto an Excel document, you upload it up to this, and it tells you conversion rates, it tells you. I haven't personally used it for recruiting data, just because it hasn't been our use case. I've used it we've used it sort of for other things, but yeah, it's that literally drag and drop. And the reason obviously, you'll have different policies at different companies around what you should and shouldn't be uploading or telling or using ChatGPT for. So obviously, please consider that. But of course, you can anonymize data before uploading it and all those things. That makes sense.
That's very exciting.
Say that the good applicant tracking systems are going to have that built into their reporting structures next, right? If they haven't already started, so that you can just ask your applicant tracking system in natural language. So, how were my conversion rates? So, how many applications did I have for this role? I could imagine that's not far behind.
Yeah, and someone from audience, Giuseppe, is recommending also Gamma. I think it's very similar to presentations software that Presentations AI, is it? Chris mentioned. So yeah, maybe have a look. And Giuseppe is asking a question, which I'm personally very interested in. So I'm gonna use my power to override that question. So, do you justify paying $20 for ChatGPT? I think, Siadhal, you are on the Pro. I am not on the Pro. What is the opinion overall about this?
I think it's obviously you should, because well, obviously it depends on your personal situation, but if you're using it for work purposes, I promise you'll get more than $20 of value out of it in a month.
Chris, what is it?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely worth it. Like, I think I don't even just use it for recruiting, I use it for things outside of that as well. So, and I'm not saying like you can obviously use ChatGPT 3.5 as well, but this thing, it provides you with, I think, a little bit more accurate data. It's got more in tune with it. So,
and even beyond like its practical use, again, we're at the foothills of a real revolution here, and just as an individual who will no doubt want to sort of hone your intuition around how these products work, this is a very given everyone is aware of the brand ChatGPT. Everyone, like, no one's going to be questioning what are you getting. Like, everyone, you're not going to have to build a business case around that. It just makes a ton of sense to be using the latest and greatest, especially at this moment in time, because yeah, you building up intuition around how to use these tools is going to be vital for like the individuals and their long-term career.
Nix, what is your situation? Thanks.
Yeah, totally the same. I mean, just to use Sial's metaphor or analogy of the foothills, like why would you not want a thing that's going to get you to the top of the mountain the best, the most efficiently, the fastest, whatever detail you can get out of it, you know, maximize it. It's so affordable. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks a lot for sharing. And I'm quite aware of the time, and I think we have just the last couple of minutes for the parting advice. And I think that will be about the competencies. As AI is helping us, empowering us, what is the core recruiter competency that you'd recommend people work on and make improvements on?
I think, first of all, I'd say just start getting curious with this, get involved, start using it as much as possible, and just, you know, you may think it's very strange when you actually initially start talking to this this machine, but once you start to understand how to talk to this, you will be able to get incredibly accurate data. You'll be able to get incredibly valuable information. But if you just ask it, let's say, one question and then leave it at that, you're not going to get to the substance of what you actually need. You're just going to think it doesn't know what you need. But if you're really able to articulate what you want and what type of information you need, then, you know, this thing is going to be an incredibly valuable tool for you. So I would say that. I do have a kind of I was in one of the I listened to a podcast from Robin Choi this week, and it was a kind of an overview of how to use it and how to prompt ChatGPT. So I will be able to throw that into the chat for people now, but, you know, I think that's what's going to separate you from the rest.
Yeah. Thank you. Nix?
I agree completely. I wrote a number of things. So openness, curiosity, just explore, you know, play with it, see what you can do. And it struck me when ChatGPT first came out that it was almost teaching me how to use it. Like we need to become prompt engineers, all of us in our specific areas and in our lives, get better and better at using these things, and it'll change everything. Definitely. Stay open, stay curious, keep playing with it.
Yeah, for me, so what will differentiate recruiters? I would just say relationships. Anything that's not helping you develop better relationships, see if you can get something else to help you with that. And then you should really be thinking, hey, the thing that is going to be totally sustainable for like the length of anyone on this call and anyone listening career is going to be the relationships you have with candidates, with hiring managers, with other folks in the organization. That's where you want to be excelling.
Just want to add on to that. So as recruiters, we're in this amazing, unique position that we actually, if we're with a company for a reasonable amount of time, we get to learn about every area of the business. There's nobody else that gets to do that other than recruiters. This is obviously for internal, but also for agencies. You know, you get insight into so many different areas of any given customer. And I was going to say, the space and the time that you're now saving, where you would normally do things like be taking notes and summaries and so on, become really, really well versed and understand the company that you work for or the customers, like really, really know the different spaces, because you have the time and the opportunity to do that now with these tools.
Use it wisely. Yeah, I do agree. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you, everyone, for dedicating your afternoon to this conversation. I personally have a couple of takeaways for me personally to implement, and I hope the audience benefited as well. So thank you, everyone, and stay curious, folks, and meet you soon. Yeah, bye.